Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Bibb. I'm an employee of the City of Cleveland, also the mayor of the great City of Cleveland, and I'm honored to welcome this amazing group of mayors, leaders from the White House, C40 and climate mayors here today for this very impactful conversation. Today is going to be all about how do we as mayors and as key stakeholders take the amazing work that President Biden and Vice President Harris have led around the Inflation Reduction Act and make that change possible for the residents that we serve every single day. We are honored to have John Lucey here from the White House, who works directly with John Podesta in the White House to really support mayors all across the country to execute this historic federal legislation. We've got some great partners here in the room as well, C40, climate mayors, USDN, and the Rockefeller Foundation. Let's give them a big round of applause for making this event possible. And the reason why we wanted to host this conversation in Cleveland, as many of you know, we are a legacy American city with a strong history in terms of addressing climate change and advancing environmental justice. And we thought it was important to uplift our experiences as mayors in the Midwest to really help this White House, this administration, continue to do the amazing work that they're doing. So excited for the conversation, excited to hear from these great mayors on the panel today, and with that, I'll kick it over to John for opening comments. John?
Thank you so much, Mayor. It is an honor and privilege to be with you all today. Really appreciate the warm welcome and introduction. As Mayor Bibb mentioned, my name is John Lucey, and I have the distinct privilege of working with state and local governments from across the country on implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act. When the Biden-Harris administration entered office nearly 4 years ago, our nation faced multiple challenges at once. A health crisis in the form of a once-in-a-century pandemic, an economy in crisis with millions out of work, small businesses shuttered, a climate crisis with escalating hurricanes, flooding, wildfires, devastating American communities. All that on top of decades of underinvestment in our infrastructure and industrial base, and decades of policies that attempted, unsuccessfully, to grow the economy from the top down. President Biden said enough. It's time to build the economy from the bottom up and middle out through a modern American industrial strategy, one that invests in American workers and positions them to lead the future, onshores critical supply chains to reduce our reliance on foreign markets, and one that puts underserved communities at the front of the line for new opportunities. That modern industrial strategy is now coming to life thanks to the Biden-Harris administration's Investing in America agenda. And at the center of that agenda is clean energy. Clean energy creates good-paying jobs, fuels economic growth, expands our production base, bolsters energy security by bringing supply chains home, and directly confronts the climate crisis by cutting harmful pollution. And thanks to all three bills in the Investing in America agenda, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, we've sent a powerful signal to the private sector. They've already responded with over $220 billion in new clean energy announcements since President Biden took office. As a result, we expect clean energy deployment over the next 4 years to be 25% higher than it would have been without the IRA. We're proud of what our administration has accomplished so far to change our trajectory on clean energy and climate, but in Washington, it is recognized that this job cannot be accomplished without local leaders like we have gathered in the room today. Many of the Inflation Reduction Act's largest programs sought to provide flexibility that local governments have been seeking for so long. Namely, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program out of the Environmental Protection Agency recognized that cities and towns throughout the country were oftentimes leading the charge on climate work and were closest to the communities that most needed funding for solutions that reduce air pollution, advance environmental justice, and accelerated America's clean energy transition. Mayor, do you mind reminding me, was it $130 million that Cleveland received out of those CPRG awards with Cuyahoga County, as well as some of the local leaders here today? So well done to you. That's incredibly, I'll take a brief aside to say, there's been a ton of local energy across the board on the Inflation Reduction Act opportunities available. Of that $4 billion CPRG program, $30 billion of applications were submitted. So it was incredibly competitive, and hats off to you all and your teams on being able to secure that funding. This moment calls for that kind of ingenuity at the local level. As we approach the end of 2024, a great portion of the grant programs of the IRA will have been awarded, But as you've heard throughout today and tomorrow's agenda, and will continue to hear, the work is really just beginning. With the opportunities provided through the tax provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, including direct pay, the next decade can continue the momentum we've been on and seen these last few years. The Biden-Harris administration knows that local officials will continue to lead this charge. The opportunity to stack, blend, and braid some of these funding sources through the bipartisan infrastructure law and Inflation Reduction Act can be challenging, but was, as we've already seen, worth the effort. So I'm really grateful to be in the room with leaders ready to accept the challenge and learn from their experiences navigating some of these funding opportunities. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and I'm really excited to lead us in this discussion from the people really doing the work now. All right, so first we'll turn back over to Mayor Bibb and dive right in on discussing some priorities across the region. What are some of your city's immediate climate goals or actions that you're focused on?
Well, as I said in my opening comments, we are a legacy American city that has a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities to really maximize as we contemplate how to really leverage this historic federal investment in our region. I'd say a couple things. One, it's very important for us to really make sure that the work we're doing around updating our climate action plan, updating our 5-year mobility plan is really rooted in the everyday lived experiences of the people that we serve. I think about the work that Kim Foreman's leading at our organization, really grounding residents in terms of making sure that these benefits are broad-based, turning a historically disenfranchised Black neighborhood into a prime area where they're taking landfill and making Black gold, right? New soil to create new food produce in certain neighborhoods. I think about the work we're doing with our foundation partners and Growth Ops. They leverage a major investment from EPA to make sure we're building solar panels and installing solar panels all across our city. As one of the most energy burdened cities in the country, where a majority of our residents are spending nearly half of their monthly income on energy bills, that's a problem. So electrifying our neighborhoods, decarbonizing our city block by block is so crucial to that work, and these federal investments are going to help us do just that. And lastly, the other thing I'm excited about is Cleveland was once known as the forest city, but unfortunately, at many parts of our city, we have not done our job of maintaining our tree canopy. So we were lucky to get a $3.4 million grant to make sure we're putting more trees in historically disenfranchised neighborhoods in our community to cut down on air pollution, enhance the air quality, and give our residents the kind of neighborhood amenities that they all deserve.
Amazing. Thank you for your leadership, Mayor. Mayor Blackwell, could I perhaps turn to you?
When it's green, it means go. Thank you. You know, I can say that although Cleveland's a central city, it's the city of Maple Heights. Most of the people there are from Cleveland. I'm from Cleveland. I grew up in the Glenville area and moved to Maple Heights in the 90s. Upward mobility. My dad did 32 years at the Ford plant in Walton Hills, a little bit closer. But one of our issues is poverty. We have a double-digit poverty rate in Maple Heights. You heard my mayor, my colleague, Mayor Bibb. I still call him my mayor because the church is still in Cleveland. A lot of what I do is in Cleveland, families in Cleveland are single-family headed households. A third of the households in Maple Heights are single-family headed households that work 2 to 3 jobs. And so what we can do to reduce that burden, to maybe have them be home a little bit more with the children so that we have that relationship with mom being there helping at the table with homework, being able to engage herself in school activities, having that citizen engagement is very, very important. But for me, this is my 3rd term, 9th year, believe it or not, everything I do is about enhancing the quality of life. Maple Heights is one of those cities that changed with the white flight. And what we left behind, the wealth moved out, but hope moved in. This was the opportunity for many people, like myself and my husband, to have our first home. The first home was a bungalow, 1 kitchen and a bunch of kids upstairs and just trying to figure it out. And so infrastructure was not there. 10 years, no road repair. The city became dirty, polluted. I spent years working at the hospital. in pulmonary for a pulmonologist. So respiratory diseases plague our city. COPD, bronchitis, emphysema, asthma, exacerbated as we know about, air that's not clean. And so these are things we're doing to try to figure out how we can increase the awareness that these are related to health outcomes. And I've had to rely on experts because when you're the mayor of a city like Maple Heights, it's 5 square miles, almost 6 square miles, 25,000 people, 1 leader. You have to rely on partnerships. So I take my lead from cities like Cleveland, the Black environmental leaders, the Ohio Environment Council, NOACA, who happens to sit on the board, as we look at, right now we've got a $2.2 million grant for congestion mitigation to really stop the idling at traffic lights and keep traffic moving. These have been partners, and I'm looking for leadership because when you're trying to solve the issue of we were in fiscal emergency. Our city was in fiscal emergency. You're trying to balance a budget, increase revenue, bring in officers, and manage a business, a big business. But you still have the challenge of taking care of the people there. And so I'm so grateful. These are opportunities that we can take advantage of. Power Plains Future Ohio, we are a member city, because that's where I can pull my best practices. I don't think any mayor walks in knowing everything, and I didn't come to politics. Like you, I literally left corporate America and said, oh, I'm gonna be a public servant, and what a learning curve. So the partnerships, the information that's been out there, the funding has helped me be successful or begin to be successful to create what that plan looks like and then pass that on to my administration and those environmentalists in Maple Heights. So one thing I do want to share is we're one of the pilot cities to become a drain keeper. The Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District brought out 20 kits for us to be drain keepers so we can keep our drains clean. And so we're making baby steps, but we're intentional, and we keep educating ourselves and arming ourselves with these organizations that know a lot more than I know how to do. And these are my coaches and my mentors. I take their lead. They've been very, very helpful. Thank you.
That is terrific, and really appreciate you centering the public health aspects of so much of this work. Mayor Brennan.
Thank you. I'm Michael Dillon Brennan, Mayor of the City of University Heights, and University Heights is a first-ring suburb of the City of Cleveland, one of the first suburbs, along with Cleveland Heights and Shaker and Maple. These are all cities that were developed early, that were founded over a century ago now, even though they are suburban, but they're not suburban they are suburban in a much more urban sense. When it comes to sustainability, when it comes to making improvements and strides in a community like ours is largely residential. We don't have industry in the city of University Heights. We had a greenhouse gas study this last year to figure out where our emissions are coming from to help us better tackle what it is that we should be doing as a community. As it turns out, over 68% of our emissions are residential, and then 28% are transportation. So what we did was we wanted to take an incremental approach and look at that 68%, and we put on earlier this year our first sustainable home fair. I mean, in a residential community like ours with homes that are 50 to 75 to 100 years old, a lot of folks are looking at home improvement projects. And what we did here was we said, if you're going to make these improvements, do it in a sustainable way. And we put together in the gymnasium vendors and interest groups and advocacy groups who would help our residents not only give them guidance on improvements, but do those improvements in a way that would reduce their carbon footprint. When 68% of your emissions are coming from your residential households, well, then there's a way of moving the needle if all of us make those changes at home, in our yards, with our homes. With that, you see initiatives, by the Biden administration. You see the direct pay that is available for nonprofits, for governments, for entities that didn't traditionally file a tax return and therefore did not have the ability to realize the benefit of a tax credit or a tax deduction until now. And what's great about the direct pay program is with it available for years to come, we can make the plans with our fleets, the capital expenditures that we know we're going to make. And we know that these aren't competitive, that all we have to do is meet the criteria, file, and get the money back that helps us make the purchases that we know we need to make, but then do it in a way that makes it more reasonable, more budget friendly, while ARPA money and other programs came about that made a lot of one-time money available for local government. It's one-time money, and we know that in the long view, we still have to plan, and we still have to be prudent, and we still need to make sure that the things that we do are not only, economically, well, not only environmentally sustainable, but economically sustainable. So these are ways that we're able to move these things forward. When it comes to, again, our community, we are beginning the development of our own climate action plan. Some other communities, of course, are ahead of us on this. It's not a race, though. We're all working together to make this big blue and green beautiful planet of ours sustainable, hopefully for us to remain for some time to come. And that begins locally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And one of the pieces that you mentioned on direct pay there, turning your capital plan almost into a climate plan, is just unbelievable. The long-term ability to plan, and actually you have 10 years to have focus is an incredibly powerful tool. To avoid the mic passing back and forth, Mayor Sarin, would I be able to go to you?
So hello, Mayor Khalil Sarin, City of Cleveland Heights. I am fortunate to be the home to a wide variety of extremely environmentally conscious people, some of whom are in this room today, leaders at the local and regional level in these spaces. And that provides me with an opportunity. I was elected as the first elected strong mayor in the city of Cleveland Heights. We changed our government. It was a whole saga. And what this has presented Cleveland Heights, though, is an opportunity to do things in a dramatically new way. This is an inflection point for us. And we've always been, we've long been an environmentally conscious city, a city that pays attention to those things and cares about them. And our government has normally been on the side of those things. But this was an opportunity for us to take some really dramatic steps and do some things in a new way. So we try to take all the steps we can. One of the first things I did when I came into office was to ensure that we were switching from non-renewable to renewable sources of electricity for all of our municipal facilities. So that was one decision point that we could just make. We could just do that thing and begin a reduction in our contribution to emissions, whether local or not. The second thing that I did, well, maybe not the second, but one of the other very early on things that I did was, since we are a member community of NOPEC, I met with NOPEC and we determined that we would be a 100% renewable aggregate city. And so anybody who does not proactively opt out of the NOPEC aggregation is getting their electricity from renewable sources. And I think that has, a dramatic impact on exactly one of those things, that residential, source of emissions. Not the immediate local emissions, but still, it's important. But we've done a whole bunch of things. One of the major accomplishments, I think, was hiring our first sustainability coordinator, who is here in the audience right now, Dr. Andy Boateng. I think that we are all very fortunate to have him on board. With Dr. Boateng, we're working with a consultant to create our first climate action and resiliency plan for the city of Cleveland Heights. And I know, being a mayor is a very practical job. Planning is lovely, action is better. Both of them together is the best. We know that we need to plan and do at the same time. We have to build this, plane in flight. We know that. So we are taking those steps. We are making choices. Right now, we're working with an organization called Leopardo Energy to engage in what would be sort of a second PACE program that the city has operated in the last decade, to improve our facilities and make them more energy efficient, and utilize those savings in order to pay for the changes that we're making. Those are the sorts of things that we know we need to do as we are working with all of our partners, federal, state, regional, local partners, to engage in even more. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to in partnership with a regional partner, NOACA, and the federal government is the creation of many charging stations for EVs that would be publicly accessible in our community. And we're not, everybody who knows Cleveland Heights knows we're nowhere near a highway. It's gotten a little bit better recently with Opportunity Corridor and some other things, but so we're not necessarily top of mind when it comes to those large improvements, those large investments in charging infrastructure. But we also know that people need those things where they go. And we're putting them at City Hall, we're putting them at the Lee Road branch of the library, and hoping to do more in the future. And the federal government and NOACA have been our partners in this process. But ultimately, I think the other mayors have talked about this. This, as a mayor, I represent these 45,000 people. And I have to keep their interests top of mind in everything that I do. And so I think about not just the lofty goals that we all share, the global goals. We know that this is a crisis in one of its most strictest and direst senses. We know that we could create a world that is so much less habitable for us that the devastation would be unimaginable for us. We know that. And that has to stay an important goal. But in order to get the work done, we have to connect that to people's day-to-day experiences. We have to ensure that the people who would be voting for me next year or not recognize that what I'm doing in this space is important for them as they're going to the grocery store or as they're picking their kids up from school. And so these are the things that I have to think about. One of the things that we did, and I got to give credit to my special assistant over here, Patrick Costigan, for spearheading a process where we purchased and installed several air quality monitors throughout our city. Because we know we have the regional data, we know we have the EPA data, but what's happening on an extremely local level? Are there ever going to be situations where the hyper-local air quality is such that we can warn this school, or that we can encourage this neighborhood, like, hey, maybe today isn't the day that you go outside and mow your lawn. Maybe instead you wait until a better air quality day. And having that kind of data is important, but it also connects to people's lived experiences, people with asthma, people with COPD, that sort of information, and us engaging with them about their actual experience introduces them into this world in a way that really connects. And it's more than that. And I want to sort of divert a little bit and talk about housing. And I want to talk about affordable housing. I want to talk about housing stability. Because ultimately, one of the things that will impact my community, which has extreme economic stratification, we're not, we were intentional in the 60s and 70s about combating the white flight that Maple Heights suffered from, and we did too, but we had a particular approach to it that mitigated the effects of that a bit in Cleveland Heights. But we still have economic stratification. We've still got some racial segregation, although it's not a complete divide. And those are things that I take into account as well, because I want to make sure that the city that we have 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now is still there for the people who are there now. I want to make sure that as this region on our wonderful lake invites and accepts not just the climate refugees who are, having, financial or economic stress and trouble in the places they live, but the people who can come here and buy up blocks of land because they have the money to do so and they want to. I want to make sure that the people who are here now, the people I represent now, aren't forced out in the event of an influx of new, possibly wealthy people who want to take advantage of what's happening to our climate at this local level. And so I have to think not only about how we are reducing our negative impact on the environment as a government, as a community. I also have to think about how we're preparing for an eventuality. And one of the ways that we do that is by building, by working with partners like the land bank, and setting up an operation in the city of Cleveland Heights to protect our current residents from those economic negative impacts from the climate emergency. So I think for a city like ours, it is such a multifaceted battle here that I am encouraged by having panels like this, being able to go to the U.S. Conference of Mayors or the Ohio Mayors Alliance and work with other mayors to bring ideas back home. Those sorts of partnerships at the local and regional and federal level are extremely important for our success here. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate the holistic approach that you take at tackling a lot of these issues facing your constituents. And I'll just note that, I think as everybody can see from the mayors that we have today around the table, is the collaboration in this area really uniquely separates the greater Cleveland area from many other localities throughout the country, and the ability to information share between you all to tackle these problems, again, as holistically as possible is a huge benefit, I believe, to each of your citizens. I'm going to move us along to our second question here on how has federal funding through the IRA and bipartisan infrastructure law assisted your work in these areas? And I'll kick us off over with Mayor Bradley.
Hello, I'm Jack Bradley. I'm from the city of Lorain, Ohio, and we're about 40 miles west of Cleveland. And we're a legacy city like Cleveland, and certainly I want to thank the Biden-Harris administration for getting us direct dollars to our cities, probably the first time through the ARPA funding. And without that funding, not only would the city have had trouble surviving during the pandemic, but also a lot of our businesses in our city could not have survived without the funding that we were able to provide to our citizens. And this was something that mayors, all of us mayors on this panel, advocated for with the Biden administration, and they heard us loud and clear, and they gave us that money that helped us survive. Now with the infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, we have new opportunities to help our cities. And as Mayor Bibb indicated, trees are so important to our environment. And we had a bad storm here several weeks ago, and we have a park in Lorain called Oakwood Park. And it's one of our older parks in the city of Lorain. Over 20 trees came down, and another 70 trees are going to have to come down. And that's what the environment is doing to our cities. We can't plant enough trees, and we can't maintain or keep the trees that we have. And so we have to ask the federal government to provide us with maybe some funding to help us replant these trees. But we also have to ask our partners in our city to also help us. Now, we're a legacy city. We were a steel producing community, we were a shipbuilding community, and we had the auto industry in the city of Lorain. They've all left. And sometimes it's hard to get a hold of these industries that made a lot of money in your community and then left and kind of leave us with brownfields that we have to clean up, because if we don't clean up these brownfields, then we don't have any development. And through monies that have been given not only to our cities but also to the state of Ohio, those monies have been available to help clean up brownfields. And without that money, you're never going to be able to attract businesses to come into your community. It's really funny. Yesterday, I had some fellows come in with a representative from the county who want to put in a data center in the city of Lorain. And data centers generate a lot of heat, because you're talking about a room that's filled with computers that have to be cooled, but also generate a lot of heat. And a lot of times this heat is just dissipated up into the air. And they were talking to me about using that heat that they're going to generate to actually heat and cool our wastewater and get it to about 10,000 residents that live in an area of Lorain called South Lorain. Now, Lorain has a population of about 30% plus Hispanic population, and a lot of our Hispanic population lives in South Lorraine, and they're low and moderate income families. And through this program, they're going to assist us in the city of Lorraine taking over, providing power to our citizens. We can get new furnaces or heat exchange pumps into their homes for very little cost. And the city then becomes a provider of energy to about 10,000 homes, and hopefully we can use direct pay for what we're doing to help our citizens. Now, that's private-public partnerships. And that's working together. And, you know, as soon as they came in and started telling me about this, I said, gee, you know, now I'm maybe thinking a little bit different about a data center, because the first thing I asked them is, how many jobs are you going to create? And they said, well, maybe 20 to 50 jobs. And I'm thinking, gee, you know, do we really want just 20 or 50 jobs? But then when they start talking about the city providing power and heating and cooling to 10,000 citizens in our city, then all of a sudden my whole attitude changed. And sometimes we have to become aggressive with our former partners. So Republic Steel in Lorraine, I was unable to get a hold of them for about 2 years. They just wouldn't return calls, they wouldn't return emails, they wouldn't talk to us. And so I told our building, housing, and planning department, I said, you guys have drones, don't you? And they said, yeah. I said, well, I want you to fly some drones over Republic Steel's property, and I want you to get some information, because some of these buildings are like collapsing and falling apart. And so we flew drones over, and then as a result of getting this drone footage, we were able to get a search warrant. And then we got Lorraine County Public Health, we got the fire department, we got the police, we got our building, housing, and planning department to go onto Republic Steel's property. Guess what? Republic Steel is now meeting with us on a regular basis, and they're going to be tearing down 2 buildings very, very shortly. And now they're trying to get private investors to come in and redevelop the Republic Steel property. So sometimes you got to be a little bit aggressive. And now we're telling these developers, hey, there's a lot of money out there, and the city of Lorraine is willing to work with you to do something positive. But, you know, you just can't sit on your hands. I think that, you know, doing little things are important, but you got to do big things too. You know, we started off with a little thing. I was approached about the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. And, you know, would you be willing to make some pledges to help with our pollinators? So we said, well, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So what we decided to do is reach out to our business community and say, hey, would you sponsor a pollinator garden in 12 of our parks in the city of Lorraine? So we got, you know, and then they only had to donate $300 to pay for the seeds, and then we had their groups plant the seeds, and now we have 12 pollinator gardens, and we have monarch butterflies and bees, and, you know, just that little thing that people look at. And then all of a sudden the senior center says, hey, can we make some huge butterflies to put at some of these pollinator gardens? So now we have, you know, plywood butterflies that families can bring their children to the pollinator gardens and take pictures with the butterflies and maybe learn a little bit about the pollinators and how important they are and how important it is to our environment and things like that. So you got to do big things, but I think like all the rest of the mayors on this panel, we also do little things to help with our environment. And you know, I hope the federal government keeps giving us money, because you know this is so special to be able to get the kind of money that's available. And I could talk about a lot of other things, because the federal government has been so good to us. And again, a lot of this money is filtered through the state, and it's very competitive. So you just they don't just send it to you directly. A lot of the money to clean up brownfields has gone actually to the state government. And you need partners. And if you don't have good partners, like county commissioners and so forth, you're not going to get the money. And so we had an old hospital in Lorraine that was privately owned, and the people that owned it started to demolish it, and they left us with a mess. because they crushed some asbestos materials, and then we had the EPA, the Ohio EPA and the city of Lorain put a stop on them, and then the people abandoned the property, sold it to somebody in Florida for $500,000, and now I've got a big headache because I've got like Beirut, Lebanon on the corner, one of the main corners of the city of Lorain. Well, we teamed up with our county commissioners. We applied for a grant to try to get it cleaned up, and the state of Ohio gave us $6.5 million to clean up that site. Well, once I get it cleaned up, maybe I'll have a place to put our new city hall and our new police department. So, working together is very important, and having advocates, not only in your state government, but also in your federal government is so important. I don't care if they're Republicans, I don't care if they're Democrats, if they were going to help the city of Lorain, they're going to be my friend. And anytime I go to Washington, D.C. with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I make sure that I visit with Bob Latta, J.D. Vance, Sherrod Brown, Marcy Kaptur, even though she's not even our representative anymore, she's still a big advocate for the Great Lakes and for our cities. And you got to keep those contacts. And if you do, good things will happen to your city. So that's what I have to say.
I think everybody can tell why I always answer Mayor Bradley's call. Please don't send the drones after me, sir. Mayor Mallett, could we go to you?
Absolutely. I got some ideas from Mayor Bradley on the drones, but Shamus Malik, Mayor of the City of Akron, Ohio. I agree with Mayor Bradley that a lot of this started with ARPA, right? ARPA was kind of the blueprint because it was a novel approach to do these direct allocations directly to cities. And I think in some ways it was a test because I think sometimes we forget, this is taxpayer money, right? This isn't free money, this is taxpayer money. It's your and I's money, it just gets filtered through the federal government. And so, with ARPA, we at the city were able to really invest in cutting down on our lead water mains to the point that we are within just a few years distance of completely eliminating our lead water mains. And thanks to the work of folks in this room like our finance director, Steve Fricker, we're really proud of that work. And so we've been able to invest in things, and some things worked really well and some things were harder. We had a home repair program that has taken a long time to get off the burner, but now we've learned lessons, so the next time there's money available, we're gonna be better and better and better at doing that work, and we've learned lessons from it. Then when we look at the new laws and the new money that's available, we were one of 5 communities in the country that have been designated a tech hub by the Department of Commerce, and a $60 million allocation earlier this summer to be a sustainable polymer tech hub. This is really the legacy of our rubber industry, right? At the turn of the 20th century, if you wanted to be in the rubber industry, you had to be in Akron, Ohio. We want that to be the case for polymers in the 21st century. And Northeast Ohio, all of our communities, we have one of the highest concentrations of polymer companies in the world. And so we want to build on that legacy. So between $60 million from the federal government, $30 million that we are waiting on from the state government, and the private money that's going to be leveraged as a result of that, because the whole purpose is to leverage private money, we're looking at over $100 million of investment that's going to go into building the future of our polymer industry, again, sustainable polymers, so that it's not something that is continuing on with the pollution that has plagued our last 50 years in kind of consumption and consumerism. From there's so many other places we could go, but we're focused on a National Forestry Service grant that is going to help us create a nursery for some of our street trees and making sure that we're able to really build up our tree canopy, and that will be tended to and provide skills to returning citizens coming out of incarceration who are going to be learning those skills and helping them grow on their ways to their career and helping them make a change in their lives. We're looking at so many other things that are in the pipeline right now, like our EPA Community Change Grant application that, if we don't get it, it's going to take a lot longer to make the investments that we need to in a neighborhood that's been underserved for so long. But if we do get it, it's going to be catalytic for this neighborhood, and it's not just an economic justice issue, but a racial justice issue in a neighborhood that the redlining quotes, you wouldn't even believe the racism in those quotes. In this annotation. So we're so grateful to the federal government. We also see it as a test, right? To show that we can use that money as responsibly and as catalytically as possible. And frankly, that's thanks to a lot of the work of people in this room. So thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just note it's incredible to see that a lot of the Inflation Reduction Act dollars in particular are government-enabled, but private sector-led, having that effect of changing communities writ large and getting that industry buy-in and seeing those results is really incredible. So thank you again for your leadership. Mayor Weiss.
Is this on? Yeah, okay. Thank you. First of all, I just want to express my appreciation for being invited here and spending some time, which I do regularly with my colleagues on this panel on a wide range of topics. And one of the nice things about being in the Midwest, as many of us know, is that there's a different kind of philosophy about how we treat people and how we work together. And that's something that we do on a regular basis. And I could rattle off a number of different collaborative things that each of us are doing. But on this topic, I'll just mention two things. First of all, I think we are at an absolute inflection point. One of the things I tell people that, if there was any silver lining, even a little one out of the pandemic, it was an acknowledgement that things can really go wrong if you aren't really planning and addressing the issues that are fundamental to our communities. And the federal dollars that have come in for municipalities have just been dramatic and has provided an accelerator for projects that many of us have wanted to do for years. And the dollars that are now coming in are able to be leveraged, so we're able to do the things that we want to do. I won't talk about what we're doing in Shaker. For those of you who don't know, we're a community of about 29,000, one of the most diverse communities in the country. Originally a planned community, one of the first in the country as a planned community. We have very vocal, very active, very passionate residents on a wide range of topics, with sustainability being pretty much right at the top. So we've been doing things for a long, long time. I think we just got our 37th in a row Tree City award. We were awarded the gold level by the U.S. Green Building Council for work in sustainability. The first gold recipient in Ohio. But we're doing a lot of the things that you've heard about, but really just accelerating. I will just mention the one thing, because it's sort of near and dear to my heart, which is electric vehicles. I bought into electric vehicles about 12 years ago, and these are all full electric for the last 12 years. I will never go back. And I'm a little bit of an efficiency freak, so the ability to not have to get out of my car in the winter to put gas in it, and know that you're doing something that's good for the environment and for your community at the same time is great. So we have now, I think, over 22 charging stations in a 6 square mile area of Shaker Heights. We just got our first police electric bikes for our community policing program that are now out and about in our community. So it's something that's really terrific. The other thing I should just mention, because Mayor Bibb and I first actually got to know each other, is by serving on the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. And this leverage that we're seeing on these dollars that are coming in to support public transportation are critical. I mean, absolutely critical. The cost of replacing our rail cars that are now in the 40 to 50 year age that have not been replaced, that's almost a $400 million investment that we would not have been able to do without the support of the federal government on a wide range of programs. So, we will look back on this time, I think, and all agree that it was a unique time that, as I tell my children, both adults, that we will leave this to you. They will take what we have done and carry the ball forward, but we've made a good first start, but we've got a long, long way to go. Thank you.
Mayor Weiss, appreciate knowing you were into EVs before it was cool. Curious, have you been able to utilize direct pay or any of the opportunities presented by direct pay for any of those purchases?
Yes.
With the city fleet? That's terrific.
In fact, Mayor Brandon and Mayor Sarin will be happy to hear. One of these joint programs that we have is a program called First Call, which embeds social workers with our first responders to provide mental health services, and sometimes in lieu of police or fire responses. And we've just rolled this out with a number of other communities, including my colleagues, and we are buying 4 electric vehicles, 2 of which we just approved last evening, gentlemen. So, so yes, so we would not have been able to do that without those dollars. And the other area is in solar, both for our city buildings, as well as encouraging solar by our residents. For those of you who know Shaker, we are a historic city with architecture that is really second to none. And we had always taken a pretty conservative approach, some might say that's an understatement, as to what might be done on these historic buildings. But we have come around and are now modifying our policies and procedures and encouraging solar panels on our rooftops. And so this is another area we hope to have the direct pay, which is really critical, particularly for the city buildings, no question about it.
And I know it's probably music to all of the mayor's ears to hear that direct pay is not a competitive grant process like all the other ones that you guys have been doing a great job of applying for. Thank you again, Mayor Weiss. Mayor Bibb, I'm going to circle back to you. We've heard a lot about Midwest collegiality today, so hopefully you could give us a little insight on how Cleveland and the Northeast Ohio region is working together.
Well, I'll be brief because I know a lot has already been said about the spirit of collaboration that exists in this room. But there's a lot of talk and conversations about how we tackle climate change, about the importance of public-private partnerships. But I think what's indicative of our conversation here today is the power of public partnerships, federal, state, local alignment to get things done for our respective cities. And so it's great to see many of my colleagues when we meet together for the Northeast Ohio Mayors and Managers Association talking about how we get more than our fair share of federal resources, or when we're engaging with the Ohio Mayors Alliance, making sure that we have a state government that supports mayors in the state to really address these issues. And so the more we can be collaborative, the more money we'll get from Washington, because we know that's one of the big requirements is to make sure that we have intentional, thoughtful, but productive collaborative partnerships to really meet the moment.
Now that we're wrapping up, I'm finally getting the mic under control. Sorry about that, folks. So would love to go back to Mayor Mallett to just hear a little bit from your experience on joining regional workshops like the ICLEI cohort, this one, or others making progress on climate action.
Yeah, so, at the city of Akron, we maybe have not been as present as we could have been in the past. So we're actually the last major Ohio city to join Power Clean Future Ohio. When I was on city council, I brought them up to speak to our city council, and we got actually 2 cities to join. The problem was neither of them were my city. And so finally, as mayor, we were able to join. And Mayor Sarin already stole my bit, but we hired our first ever Director of Sustainability and Resiliency, Casey Shevlin, who's doing an amazing job bringing capacity and focus to these ideas. Again, ideas that are present within the city government, but need focus, need capacity, need strategy around them to really leverage them and to really make progress and to show people the value. And so even just as I sit here, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about why my special assistant didn't think about the air quality sensors, and we might have some ideas to take home. Whether we have a great drone program, but whether we've really thought about it as much as we can with vacant buildings. I tell people this, and they don't like to hear it. My favorite part about local government is stealing ideas. We can steal ideas. They really hate when I say that, my comms people, but stealing ideas from Ohio Mayors Alliance, from U.S. Conference of Mayors, from other communities. Our communities are facing very similar challenges, and why not tackle tree canopy like they do in Cleveland Heights, in the city of Cleveland, which has a new division just focused on trees, right? So it's an amazing thing, and I think we all read the same news. We all take ideas from each other and then start texting each other, hey, what are you doing here? Hey, what are you doing there? And so the collegiality ends up being an easy way, and that's what gatherings like this are so important, because not only for the mayors to be able to share ideas, but for all the stakeholders, all the practitioners to be able to do so as well.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, we're getting short on time, so we'll have one last question here. Mayor Sarin, I'll go to you on community engagement is such a large part of both IRA and bill funding, and really curious to hear what sort of community engagement your city is looking to conduct on climate action.
Sure. So, we do it in a bunch of different ways. And that's sort of how you have to engage with a community, and all of our communities are like this. We've all got shorter attention spans than we used to, and we've all got shorter time as individuals than we used to. People are focused on the very important, urgent things in their personal lives, excuse me, in their personal lives, and so they don't have a lot of time to deal with local government. And so we try to meet them where they are. So we will go out into neighborhoods. We will have, constant meetings. The public meetings. We're inviting people to come, talk with us, to hear from us. Obviously, we're publishing these things. We're using all of the social media, mechanisms to get the word out. We also have, groups of residents that are interested, that we have tapped to become a part of a climate and environmental sustainability committee, to provide input to the legislative and executive branches of our government on what we might do next. And through those people and through other key stakeholders in the community, we try to reach out into the community. And it's not just the people who are sort of self-selecting, the people who we know are interested in this, but also people, go to the church. See if you can hold that meeting at the church. Because people who might show up to that church might not show up to the community center or to City Hall for a meeting, but they might show up at that neighborhood church. So that's the kind of work that we're trying to do, is reach out to those groups that are important in the community but not necessarily engaged in this topic.
Meeting the people where they are. Again, really appreciate that. Mayor Weiss, do you have anything to add on this topic?
No, Mayor Shannon covered most of it. I would just say, at least in Shaker, we started, when I first became mayor, we had a climate committee, which we then turned into a sustainability committee. And we cover a broad range of sustainability issues. So whether it's buildings, transportation, energy, waste, and education. Those are all areas that we have very systematically, we've got charts and tables that what are the substantive areas, and then how are we going to attack each one of these. And so we have residents that have particular interests in certain topics. And so one of the things that we found is to make sure we're kind of covering the waterfront with a variety of issues, because everyone has different things, whether it be electric vehicles, whether it be what we call grow, no mow areas within our community, where we're reducing the number of mulching and mowing areas. Composting, we've had a long-standing relationship with Rust Belt Riders, and you get this out by going, in many cases, door to door. We're big on block parties in my community. I spent most of the last weekend with our residents at block parties, but it's amazing what you hear from your residents about what they would like to see happen in our community on a sustainability issue. And I like to say that no one's got a corner on good ideas, and that always remains true in what we hear from our residents. So they're actually coming to us a good bit, while we're also trying to reach out to them through our committee structures and so forth. But it's a good give and take.
Absolutely. Before I go to Mayor Bibb to close us out here, I'd love to see if Mayor Blackwell has anything she'd like to add.
Thank you. I think it's important to weigh in. Several of you have introduced sustainability. Staff persons or officers. When you're a city like Maple Heights that has fiscal challenges, there is no budget to hire a sustainability officer. I want to make sure, but the people in our city deserve the same kind of advocacy. So what I've done, because you have to be everything, the way I've engaged residents is, again, with the partnership of drain keepers, understanding why it's important to keep the drains clean. We have rain barrel workshops. It's a way to pull them in, and they understand how they're helping the community. We took this idea from you. I assume is too. The lawnmower exchange program. You shared this at a first service meeting. I told my development officer, find out where he got those lawnmowers, and thank you for telling us. And so we did a big, at City Hall, a tent, and we made it an event. You need an incentive. These are busy people. And we had to welcome out, and you brought your lawnmower. We made a big deal and flags and made a big announcement. And people exchanged their gas-powered lawnmower for an electric lawnmower. I hired a social media person. What I can't afford is a social media person. It's a different pay scale. And so we were able to share the information on social media where people are always on their phone. They'll take a look at Facebook or whatever of the social, all of these different apps. I'm not knowledgeable, but I have someone that does to grab their attention. We have music in the park tonight. As hot as it is, forecast is coming to our largest park, Stafford Park tonight at 6 o'clock. I use that time I have as I dedicate a pavilion for our providers. I will bring out NOPAC, and I see a NOPAC representative here that's there that helps them understand energy. And we're doing an energy audit on how to understand what that means to them. We also are a recipient of Solar Energy for All. We had Growth Thought President Michael Jeans come out to Maple Heights. We had a family explain on camera what that means to someone that people can relate to. She's got 5 kids, she's got a mom with brain cancer, human interest stories. So where you can't afford a sustainability officer, you've got to be creative, and the person sitting in this seat usually has to come up with the creativity. And you have to find ways that people, number one, they have to trust you. There were some people stopping at City Hall to see what would this lawnmower exchange, just because I put a tent, I made a big deal out of it. And so marketing, incentives, education, being the face of the messaging is really important when you don't have those resources to do some of the things that my colleagues are able to do. They're a bigger city, they have more revenue. But I glean from them what they can do. I do a lot of reading. Again, I have to shout out to the partners, the Black environmental leaders. What you don't have, you find in nonprofits. They're already doing the work. Honor to a young man that introduced me to Power Clean Future, Kwame Bachwe. He passed untimely, reached out to me 3 years ago on LinkedIn and says, I've got something you need to know about because you lead a city with people of color. Being receptive to the outreach, being receptive to the ideas and showing up and then relaying it from a trusted person. I'm the trusted person. To bring in a sustainability officer in Maple Heights, and I just want to be clear but not offensive, to someone they don't know that doesn't look like them, it's not going to land very well. It's just not going to land. But we will get there. We will get there because I keep putting myself in places like this and then I take it back. But having them do the rain barrel, do the drain, take a drain keeper's kit home, do it at a music in the park when they're already having a good time, they're in a good mood, receptivity, they're willing to listen to it, and bringing partners that understand their story. Maple Heights has been a city that's been written off, and so they're not very trusting. They're not very trusting. And so we have to build up that trust, and we have to let them know, clean air, you deserve it. It's for you too. They believe that so much of stuff doesn't apply to them. You have to help them believe that you too deserve clean air. We need to control the climate. We have been the benefactors of tree canopy. I bring them to the tree. Look, we're planting trees. You want to know why? Because they say, first, I don't want to clean up leaves. I don't want to, they tell me and I have to convince them. This is a good thing. This is a good thing. I know you don't want to clean up trees. I work, I don't have a lawnmower, and all of those things. So for me, when you don't have those things that other more affluent communities, someone has to come to these platforms, take ideas from him and everyone here, and bring them back and package them in a way that they will trust you and at least try it, and convince them that they deserve it. Convince them they deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you for doing the hard work of earning trust. And it sounds like we've got to all head to Music in the Park tonight at 6. So to close this out, I'm going to move to Mayor Bibb.
Well, let's give our amazing mayors another big round of applause if we can. Hopefully, we're being inspired and fired up to continue to make change in the community. Let's thank John, Lucy for coming all the way from the White House to the great city of Cleveland, Ohio. And as we wrap up, I have an action item for all my mayors. According to our executive director at Climate Mayors, Kate Wright, you guys aren't signed up as Climate Mayors quite yet. So see Kate Wright in the back, wave your hand, Kate. Become a Climate Mayor, join the movement. Thanks everybody, we appreciate your participation this evening. Thank you so much.